Gentlemen, we are about to start this meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education for July 21st. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence and follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think I got the short chair again. Okay, let me get the agenda up here and see what we're doing. Long meeting. All right. Well, here. My computer's broke. There it goes. There it goes.
Mr. Chairman, is it cranking the side?
I got a hammer out in the truck. It might help it. I don't.
It's a full start, okay.
There we go. There we go. We got it up now. It's working. It was just being a little contrary. First item on the agenda tonight is approval of the regular agenda as presented. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Ms. Bachman, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I will digress a little bit because the first item should be roll call. Mr. Johnson, do you have the roll call?
Yes, sir.
Okay, looks like everybody's here. Next item is the adoption of the consent agenda. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Motion approved by Ms. Hayes, second by Mr. Wilkerson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We do have agendas. Next item is the consideration of minutes regarding the minutes of the June 16th regular meeting. Is there a motion on that?
Second.
Motion approved by Mr. Wise, second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is recognition of hearing of delegations. Do we have anyone tonight? Mr. Johnson? Okay. No hearings, no delegations tonight. So next item on the agenda is matters of council. We don't have any matters involving council. That's always good when we can say that. Next item on the agenda is reports from the director.
All
Dr.
right.
Cox.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see everybody. I'm going to hand out the document. I'm going to go over some information, a little bit of data from the surveys that we did this past weekend, the end of last week and through the weekend for teachers and for parents and also principals, because we want to get some principal feedback about mask and how they felt about that. And so we wanted that information to be ready for this evening. And so we're going to go through that. We did make, based on feedback from parents, we did make some changes to this document. What I thought I would do is hand this document back out, and 98% or so, 99% maybe, it's the same as it was this past week. There are a couple of changes to it, but I have a slide at the end of my presentation that will tell you what the changes are. Does that make sense? But this is the one that's actually the latest one based on feedback that we've received. And then I'll take questions, and then we can have discussion about the plan and if there's anything that you guys want to make an amendment to change. We have the resolution that's on the agenda this evening. It is what approves this plan, but it also does some other things that we've discussed in the past that are kind of similar to what the governor's executive order did back in the spring, which is give us some flexibility with some policies that we've already used in the spring once the pandemic hit, to kind of use those same modifications again throughout this year. And so I think that's what most school boards in the state, how they're handling that. We have to submit this continuous learning plan to the state by the 24th, I think, Scott, is that right? 24th, for them to go through and approve. Now, what we submit to the state will also include some granular things that are not in here, internal to the system, about how we're going to give them attendance of students and those types of things that happen in the normal course of business, because some of the changes like the virtual piece and how we're going to take attendance. If we're in hybrid on days that we don't have students on campus, how we're going to register attendance. Those are the granular things the state wants to know. That's a part of this plan that we'll have to inform them about it. So there's some things that are internal to the system between us and TDOE about how those things operate and that they sign off on, that will be part of the plan that we submit to them. So we'll have that. I think that's first on the agenda, maybe after we get to new business. Let me go through a little bit of the information. Is it on your screen? No.
Second, it looked like it was
JJ?
coming up.
I'm gonna wait till we get that up for everybody, okay, so you can kind of see it here. We'll get it going here in a second. There we go. Has everybody got it? Okay. So let me start a little bit with, I think this is the parent response. We had a little over 7,000 parents respond. I think the last survey that we gave was about 12,000. Is that right, Scott? So we had a little bit less in participation than we did the first one a couple of weeks before that. Some of that may be just because they looked at the plan and didn't want to take the survey, or maybe they thought it was the same survey again and they'd already answered it. So whatever reason, we had a little bit less response rate than we've had on the first one. I think the question says to the parent, do these plans for the fall meet your family's needs? And we asked them to reply yes, mostly, or no. We were encouraged that yes and mostly was 67%, so we thought that was good. I think that's obviously not as high as you would want it, but certainly with all the change and the dynamics that are happening, we felt like that meant that the document had some good detail and some good information in it for parents, and we felt good about that. The next one, this was to parents also, at about 6,500, so some didn't answer this question. Which would you feel most comfortable with? And we said reply with 1, 2, or 3. 1, all students and staff wear masks. Only staff wear masks would have been 2. And 3, I don't care if masks are required. And so you can kind of see how that breaks down between pretty evenly there. 50% of the people said all students and staff wear masks, and then the masks for staff, and then lastly 32% said really didn't matter from a parent perspective. Teacher responses, we asked a couple of questions to teachers. Now that the district building reentry plans have been presented, what is your comfort level in returning to school in a traditional in-person setting? And so we had a breakdown there of a little over, what's that, 54% said very comfortable or comfortable. That is a little higher than the previous survey back several weeks ago before the plan was revealed, but it's not a lot of movement. So there wasn't a lot of movement in that question between any of the 4 choices. Very, very comfortable, uncomfortable, uncomfortable, and very uncomfortable. Teacher responses to the second question: would you feel more comfortable returning to school if masks were mandated for all adults and students 13 years and older? Had 1,300 responses, so we still had out of our teacher base a good percentage of responses to both these questions. And yes was about 40%, would feel more comfortable, and then 60%, basically, or a little bit over, said no, or they were indifferent to whether they wore masks or not. We thought it'd probably be good to go ahead and ask principals out there what they felt like about just in regard to the mask and requiring the mask. So we asked our principals, how concerned would you be about requiring students to wear masks? And so you see that about half said they weren't concerned at all, not concerned. And then the other half said concerned or very concerned. It was almost split down the middle. How concerned, this is a principal question, how concerned would you be about requiring staff to wear masks? And you see it skewed to where the staff wearing masks, they were not concerned about that. They felt like that was more manageable, or at least that's the way they responded to that question. All right, I'm going to hand out, can you get that back up again? I'm going to start it over again. We all look at this book, and I'm going to go through the last slides really to talk about what we've done, listening to some feedback from parents and trying to figure out, thank you, kind of where we're at as a district. So these are the changes that we made based on kind of what we've heard, the responses in the survey questions, and then also what we've gotten most feedback around in regard to the hybrid schedule, okay? So the changes that we've made to this document since the last time we met last week: one, require face coverings for all visitors to campus. That really came from more internal, that we have a lot of folks that come to our campus, whether it's, you know, delivery drivers, people that have been in other places that day, and they felt like that would probably be a good thing. So require face coverings for all visitors to campus, and so we changed that within our document to require that. Certainly, if the order from the mayor, Mayor Holt, gets extended, and he has the authority to do that, if it gets extended into the school year, it's supposed to expire now as school starts. But if it gets extended, then certainly that would obviously be consistent with having a mask for all people that show up to school campus. We had a lot of conversations, and Lisa did also, with some medical professionals. Tried to get as much information as we could about the asymptomatic portion, where we were talking about the 72 hours, monitor for 72 hours. And so based on all of that feedback, we changed that to say if you're asymptomatic, I think it's probably page 13, somewhere in there, 13, 14. If you're asymptomatic, we changed the 72-hour monitoring recommendation to encourage 14-day quarantine. And that's consistent. It's been pretty consistent with CDC, and that's for somebody that's been exposed to a positive, lives in a home with a positive, that's presumed positive, but they're asymptomatic. We feel like changing that requirement from 72-hour monitoring to a 14-day, encourage a 14-day quarantine is the best route to go from a medical perspective. We changed out the hybrid model. If you look, I'm not sure what page it is, Danny, but if you look around page 14, 15, 12, thank you. Yeah, if you look at 12 is, yes, 12 and 13. 12 is the model that we had out last week. We believe that that model gives us the best opportunity, and our principals the best opportunity, and our teachers to be successful with a restart to school. I spoke with principals this morning. They're all in unison said, hey, giving us a chance to do all of these new procedures and routines is going to be best if we have a staggered start, a phase-in start. So we kind of changed the heading of that page 11, I think, is it?
11.
Yeah. So 11, look at 11, page 11. Page 11 is last week's exact hybrid for the start for the first 2 weeks of school. What we did was, to save confusion, we went ahead and called it the phase-in hybrid schedule, because that's what we're trying to do, is phase in a restart to school. And so that gives our principals, like I said, and teachers an opportunity to set routines, get students back acclimated to campus that are going to come back to campus, and I think give us our best shot to be successful, which is kind of one of our guiding questions. If you look, we went ahead and called the dates out. Do you see that on the schedule? We went ahead and called the dates that we're going to run that schedule. Based on feedback and what we know from an instructional standpoint, we know that if we continue in a hybrid model beyond the first 2 weeks, that model that we had last week probably will not be best long term. Okay? So we went back and looked at it. We had a lot of feedback about elementary students in general from parents. Probably the majority of the calls were from elementary parents that said, hey, we understand the 2-week hybrid deal. We don't like it, but we understand it once you talk through it. But we don't think that that's something that's going to be a good thing for our child long term, if you have to do that until whenever. If you have to call hybrid in the middle of the year or in November, we don't think the staggered phase-in model would be best for us. So we looked at that. We looked at other places that have a K2 model, and quite honestly, we talked to principals about that as late as this morning and got feedback. It was in unison that they prefer to have K5 every day, all day in a hybrid model on campus. And then 6-12 would do the staggered split. So the model that you're seeing that we're calling the extended hybrid schedule would basically be the hybrid model past beginning August 17th and beyond. So we tried to call it out that way so parents could understand that we're only talking about this staggered phase-in start the first 2 weeks, 10 days. And then beginning August 17th, if we have to continue, because the numbers in the situation dictates that, if we have to continue in the hybrid model, we're going to do it this way, which would be all K5 on campus every day for instruction. 6-12 would be on that same Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday out split. We would bring all CDC students back to campus every day, all day. K-12, middle school and high school. And we would run all of our pre-K on our normal schedule. And so that's the modification. It's really not a modification as much as it is just clarifying what we intend to do and then showing what our long-term hybrid model would look like. So that's kind of what we did in regard to the change within the book. Two things that I want to mention, and I'll let you ask me questions. We did go back because of that and go ahead and secure face shields. I think Ms. Hawkins was talking about that last week. We did go ahead and secure face shields for all of our K-5 teachers. Also our SPED teachers, speech and language and deaf ed, because we tried to think through who might need that protection, but they need to see their mouth moving. And so we tried to think that through and just went ahead and got those ordered. And then we did talk about we're going to extend the virtual registration until July the 26th, which is Sunday evening, because we felt like with the new information that we're putting out this evening, that may make a difference for some parents that haven't signed up. Some that have signed up may want to not sign up because they know after the 17th, if we can go in a hybrid, we're not all remote, then we would have an opportunity. They may like that better for their families, so they may choose to not do it. So we wanted to extend the virtual registration until Sunday evening, this coming Sunday evening. And those are the changes that we made from last week that we've included within the plan. Sure.
All right. I do have one quick question on the phase-in hybrid schedule. How does that affect Union? Will they do hybrid for 3 weeks, or will they go 2, and then that third week will they go ahead and transition, or will they transition with the rest of the county?
Yep, I think we talked about that last week. I would like for Lance to do 3 weeks.
Okay.
So they can be on the same schedule once we get past August 17th.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes, is there a reason why we can't include special ed in the 5 days a week since their classes are small also?
So I think that's what we were trying to do, getting CDC back on campus. When you talk about special ed, then you're encompassing a lot of students that really, if you just call out SPED in general, that could include everyone that has speech and language and other things that we felt like probably would be best served in the regular instruction, just like they have been, along with SPED support. So I guess a lot of it depends on if you're talking about every child that has an IEP, then we felt like that would be enough students that we pretty much at that point be all in.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Brewer. Dr. Phillips and all you department head folks, thank you for these accommodations. And I know that you really listen. You listen to the phone calls. Each one of us have forwarded multiple. I've still got them in the inbox, and I've been on the phone today with constituents and parents concerned. I am glad to see this modification of the hybrid. Without me voicing this to anyone else, it's just as I have listened to parents, and the struggle is real in validating their feelings of both working parents and the hybrid schedule. Just thinking through having students, parents needing them to be in a daycare of some kind. So on those off days, they're in another group of students exposed. Come back to the classroom. I'm grateful to see K-5 attending daily after we do this, the phase in. I just wanted to voice, I still just picturing in my mind another opportunity that we would have students out in another group, then coming back to the classroom in the middle school and high school. This has been well thought through, and every scenario you could possibly think of. If we're trying to control, and even, I had a pediatrician share with me today that the risk for our children is greater for being struck by lightning or the flu than COVID. He said the high risk for our kids is this social, emotional, psychological challenges that they're in, and lacking in educational, that perfect setting. It's the perfect scenario if it were that, but having our kids then exposed to another group, whether it's childcare or now all these places are offering childcare, even a dance studio is jumping in and offering childcare for parents. So they're going to be in, and I don't know what kind of controlled environment they're in. I know our controlled environment, even in the traditional classroom, is over the top. The protocols and procedures, if our kids go 5 days a week, this will be the most sanitized environment they will be in, ever in their life. And teachers that are willing to model and wear masks, that we would even reward that behavior. And we heard it mentioned last week by our principals, middle and high school, where they're learning these social skills, that they're modeling it. You're putting the signage up, you're putting the directional lines. We're teaching our students, and then you find ways to reward that behavior. dialogue and have conversation about the importance and what we're dealing with right now. Educate them in this, but I just wanted to express that. I know we're doing the best we can, and if it's that modified hybrid from August 17th on, that's what we can do, and just best try to control and contain. I am very grateful, after talking to a couple of pediatricians, seeing the 72 hours being extended to the 14 days. Because though that wasn't just pulled out of the air, in Nashville preschools, my granddaughters at Primrose, they're going by the 72 hour. Now, don't know exactly where all that has come from, but this is more solid. This is data driven. So just wanted to express that. I know we have families that are just struggling, and really the best case scenario for these kids in some very high risk situations while they're even at home. And we know all this. We've been hearing the numbers go up on domestic violence and child abuse, that they're really safer in the classroom with these exceptional procedures and protocols for keeping them safe and healthy. But you listen, you do the surveys, data, you're hearing from your teachers, your principals, your parents. I greatly appreciate it. This is it's gonna be tough. It's not gonna be a win-win for everybody in these decisions, but if we can all be patient and look out for each other, because we really are our brother's keeper, and that we look out for each other in this and be reasonable. So, thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you, Faith. Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to also commend the staff for modifying the 72 hours. That was one of the major comments that was brought to my attention. Also, I've got a lot of compliments. It's hard to believe with the hateful email syndrome we've been suffering from. The plan is very concise, it's very detailed, it's above and beyond our surrounding counties.
Yes.
The only concern I have at this point is there any way, and I know we've debated this out the yin yang, but maybe we asked our legal department to help us, at least during the hybrid, the moderate, the yellow section, to see how we can beef up our language for mask. Again, I don't want to get into another 4-hour debate about mask, but again, my background is based in logic, and I'm sitting here in a mask today. So it kind of leads me to believe that maybe if we start that way, we ought to start with mask. And to share a short story, and then I'll give it back to you, Mr. Chairman. Our athletes in this county have been practicing already. And I hate to say this, but we've got some athletes that have been positive. But there's a reason why it's not run rampant through those athletes and the athletic community. A lot of them have been practicing a mask. And it works. The data shows it. And again, I think we can probably, the traditional model, not require it. But if there's anything our legal department or our legal attorneys could assist us with, because I know we'd have to get something short of a Attorney General's opinion, but if there's any way we could strengthen our language on the hybrid model, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tuxman. Dr. Phillips?
Yeah, so I've talked several times with our attorney about this. I also reached out to TSBA because I wanted to kind of see what they were telling other districts, because there's some districts have voted specifically had a vote about masks, which I wasn't sure that was necessarily the right way to go, but they did that, and in some locations their board attorney said it's not really legal for you to do that, and then in some places they did, so it's kind of over the board. So I wanted to kind of see what our attorney, our school board attorney, was saying about the mask issue, and then TSBA, just sheerly because he talks to a lot of school boards in the city. So as you can expect, it's a little mixed The school board attorney for TSBA, Ben Torres, said, I think there's at least some language in Tennessee code that would allow you to require the mask to be worn. But I'm not sure. You would need to talk to your own attorney. I said, okay, that's fair enough, I understand that. So I did, extended conversation a couple of times with Todd. Todd's take is that you may have the authority to do that in that code, but similar to what Ben said, we don't know yet because no one's really challenged that. We feel confident that it will get challenged at some point in Tennessee by some school district, right? It's going to happen. Todd and I talked more around, is that the best way to encourage people to wear masks? Just sheerly from human behavior. And I talked with my team about this. I talked with principals about this. And our overarching belief is that if we model this and we set an expectation, then I think we will probably have as much compliance or more compliance than if we throw a hammer down and say you're going to. Now, with that being said, we have buildings out there that are buying and selling, or having available to sell with PTO and other functions, masks that have school logo, that kind of stuff on there. And I think that is a proactive way that students can be encouraged to wear the mask, and staff as well. We've never been concerned about if we ask our students and staff to do it, they will do it. I think that's reflected in the principals saying they believe 70% of them said, I'm not concerned if we ask our staff to wear it. I think they will. I think it's also important to realize that if a principal stands up and says to their staff, who all know each other, right? We're very family oriented in our county. If they stand up and say, hey, let's talk about the mask issue. We have 5 of our staff members that have unique situations. They're taking care of somebody at home that's ill. Their spouse is ill. Let's all work together to make them not feel uncomfortable at work. Let's wear a mask. Right? Guess what happens all of a sudden? They all do that. Because they know David, and they know Jeff, and they know Sarah, right?
Right.
And they do it because they were asked to do it the right way. And it wasn't a hammer that came down from somebody that's somewhere that they don't even know. So I think requiring the mask, while you can do it, and may be legal, may not be legal, I don't know, depends who you talk to. I'm not even sure they know, to be honest. I just don't think that's the way to get a high level of response and get it the right way. I just don't feel like that's the right thing to do. And it's not because it's should you wear the mask or you shouldn't wear the mask. It's how do you get the most people to wear the mask and be willing to do that. That's, I think, where it comes from me. So that's kind of where we were at with mask, and after a lot of discussion, kind of landed on, continue to strongly encourage it, but to put some of those steps into place where hopefully we'll have a pretty high percentage of folks, both students and staff, that wear the mask.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Ms. Andrews?
Yes. Now I don't remember if it's, is that on? Is that on?
Oh, there you go.
You're on. Not me getting much sleep. Don't you remember this? So, obviously, I really like personally, I really like the phase-in plan. And I appreciate that we are putting dates on it. Because I think that that's important. I think I've had a lot of parents very confused about what our intention is. with that being said, I think when we look at the extended hybrid schedule, I feel like on there needs to be language, asterisk, something that says if needed. Because I feel like when this goes out, that parents are gonna look at that and automatically assume that beginning August 17th, this is what we're doing for the semester. So I think that, which I feel like our intention is that our numbers are gonna be to a point where we're gonna be able to go back to green. That's our,
Yeah,
I'm being optimistically hopeful that that's where we wanna be. So I think if we don't put the language on there that if needed, then they're gonna think that it's done and this is what it is. So
That's a good point. We can clarify
so
that.
I think that needs to be clarified. The other question I have is regarding our CDC students. With it being on the extended hybrid schedule, them to go 5 days a week. I understand why our preschoolers, because I believe they're not starting until then, or maybe the week before anyways. Is that correct? Our preschool doesn't actually start until.
I think the voluntary pre-K has a week where they're not, so it's only gonna affect them for 1 week, but the special ed preschools would have been started. So they will go on this for at least 2 weeks.
Okay. Because I know it's gonna be asked on, if they are able to go all 5 days with the hybrid, what's the thought process behind them not just go ahead and starting out with all 5 days, considering a lot of those students have special therapies and so forth that they've gone lots of months with missing. So what was the thought process of going ahead and having them still do a hybrid and not just jump into the 5 days?
I think we're viewing the hybrid as a phase-in. We're having to teach new behaviors, and we're going to get students, not only the special ed students, but we also have typical peers where we're learning some new behaviors. So all of us have to get accustomed to kind of the new normal in a classroom. The staff, the students. So the phase-in gives us an opportunity to teach those skills to everyone and for the staff to get used to doing it as well.
Right. I just was curious because definitely understand that with preschool, just because too, it's a special dynamic with preschool. Like you said, there's the peer buddies and then the special ed, and so that's just kind of a different, you're two different groups of kids that you're going to have to teach and so forth. But with the CDC specifically, since those are smaller class sizes, traditionally, and they're the way in which they learn.
Yes.
And a lot of them need the consistency. So to teach them on Monday and then not teach them again until Thursday, they're going to lose it.
Right. Again, even with the CDC students, we also are going to have to teach new behaviors for the students and also for the staff to get acclimated to how we're going to be doing things. The CDC classes, yes, have a smaller pupil-teacher ratio. Is it just not? It does have a smaller grouping, although they also have more adult staff. So no matter what, we still have a good amount of people in the setting. So we need a little bit of time to teach new routines, set up the classroom. I'm concerned about some students who have some medical conditions that we may need to do more setting up areas of the room specifically for them. So it's allowing us a time to phase in for the students and for the staff to get acclimated to an entirely new way of doing what we're doing. I agree that they need to be coming. That's why we want to do them coming 5 days a week, because they would be the ones that would have the hardest time ever getting any value out of a online Zoom, that kind of a system. So we understand the need, and we really want to meet that need.
for us to, maybe even offer that, some flexibility within the schools. I don't know if we can do that, but I know that like some schools, especially within, may have even a smaller population that, you know, if they have a handful of students, 5 or 6 in a classroom, they may be easier to go ahead and allow them to come the first, all 5 days, so forth, where you may have larger populations. And even within, I think, elementary, CDC is probably a little bit different too than maybe even high school, just because of the foundational pieces in which they are learning. So if we can look at that and see if there's maybe a way that we can even tweak that to make those considerations. And again, I don't know if that I don't know what those numbers look like for every school. And if that is something that we can legally do to allow one school to go and not and do it for the other, I don't know. But I know that there are parents, you know, as I've told you many times, my family has dealt with special ed for a number of years, and so I understand the intricacies of what that is for those students. Specifically, I think I mean, obviously our high school special ed needs it just as well, but when you're learning foundations of, you know, reading and just what they are learning, to even go gaps, especially when we've had such a long period, would be majorly beneficial to those students. So if we can look at that, that would be great, and I know the parents would greatly appreciate it. Some other questions if I can ask, not necessarily pertaining to the new part of it, but I feel like maybe some clarification that I know we've got parents watching live that just, I feel like that just so that everybody can hear it at one time, again, to have those clarifications. Union and Merrill Hyde students. We talked about this last week, that if they choose the virtual route, they will get to keep their spot for a year. But I feel like it needs to be clarified that as long as they are choosing Sumner Virtual Academy, they will receive their spot. If they choose to go homeschool, or if they choose to go private school and unenroll in Sumner County, they do not hold their spot.
That's right.
Okay.
And we've got too many buttons on, I can't get on.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, thank you. Still good.
I've got everybody written down, y'all can clear them out so we can, yeah, I'll do it.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct. So, the way we're looking at that, if they choose, because obviously it's extraordinary times. So if they choose to do any of our options with Sumner County, we would continue to hold their slot until next year at the physical school, meaning Union or Merrill Hyde Magnet, because we feel like that's the fair thing to do, the right thing to do, the fair thing to do. If they choose to leave Sumner County as a student, Sumner County Schools, then their spot will no longer be available.
I feel like that's just important for them to hear and
Yeah.
understand that
And
it's
we-
not a universal across the board
Right.
that you're holding spot.
And we probably need to make sure that's clarified somewhere within an FAQ or something that we put out. So we'll make sure we do that.
Another clarification that I'm seeing lots of conversations on this today is that students, if they, and it goes both ways, if they choose right now, if you choose for your student and you're in K-8 and you choose to do virtual, after 9 weeks, you can then choose to come back and do either whatever plan we are currently doing.
Right, that's right.
Additionally, if you choose traditional plan, the hybrid traditional plan that we are in the building plan, and after 9 weeks, you feel like your student would be better served to do our Sumner Virtual Academy, K-8, you can change after 9 weeks.
That's correct.
And then high school for both of those options is
At the
at the
break.
semester. So you cannot start and be in it for 2 weeks and then say, no, this is not us and we want to change.
That's
Once you commit, you have to commit to the full 9 weeks.
Right.
But you can make a change of decision at the 9-week mark.
Yes. What we're hopeful, I think we're all hopeful that once we get past the start of the year, will be in the green box traditional schedule. And we're hopeful that maybe some of those parents that chose that option because they were unsure about how it was going to be at the first of the year, and maybe the data that's out there now and it'll be different and better, they may choose to come back. And if they do that, then we'll have their spot for them at their school, just like they were there to start the school year.
And then students whose last names are L through Z, what will they do on August 3rd? Since they're at home,
They won't come to school.
will they need to log in or will they be
No,
given something?
that's it's just marked off in the calendar as a no school day.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I have right now. Thank you.
I've got three that have not spoken yet. Ms. Hawkins, let me go to them. Let me go to them, and then I'll come back to you. Mr. Gregory, I think you were first.
I'll be brief. I think we're to the point that we can make minor changes and make major differences as we move forward. At least I believe that. And talking with principals, teachers, parents, community, they feel the same way. You know, I think the surveys showed that. When you get 2/3 believing in something as large as our county is, and as diversified as it, that's pretty good. It really is. And the math situation, I think what you said, Dr. Phillips, with one thing added to it, there are ways to make mask incentives so that the adults and students will want to wear them. See my good friend over here, Mr. Wilkerson, got a team mask on. They're starting to show up more often. And there may be some of my favorite high school pretty quick.
Purple.
Purple, that's right. But, you know, and for the younger ones, some character or something, then all of a sudden we'll have to have a code of what not to wear. But anyway, it's a lot better if you have incentives than it is to mandate. That's my feeling of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Wilkerson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to,
Ask Mr. Gregory to turn his light off, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add to Ms. Andrews. I think we should include something that if we get back to traditional and the numbers go back up, that we would go back to the phase-in hybrid, or, I mean, I would assume that's what we would do. And also some language that would specifically say our goal is to get to the traditional classroom, the traditional schedule, 5 days a week. I think there's some parents out there that have concerns is that we would go to phase 2 of the phase-in hybrid schedule and we would stay that way for the whole year. And we all know that's not what we want done. We want our students back in school as soon as possible, but we want it to be safe for both the staff and the student. And I think if we included that language, that it would ease a lot of minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. Ms. Brown, we'll come to you.
Alrighty. I'm thrilled we got the little ones in school. That makes sense for their psyche too, because I can see it now. Why can't I go today? You know, they don't understand this. But anyway, that was great. The other thing I just want to reiterate, I'm not big on mandates because they don't normally work. But and I think your idea is correct I just want to make sure that every principal does that, because the one thing we do know is that the spreaders in the schools are the adults. It is not the children. And so my fear is that one teacher gets it and all of a sudden we've got a school without teachers. And it would be a horrendous thing to happen. So I think, to me, that's the most important thing facing us. We've taken care of daycare problems for most students by being able for them to go. But I do fear the teachers' welfare. And, as the doctor told me, masks are not a guarantee, but they definitely help. They're the best thing you've got going for you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Hawkins.
Thank you. I need some help understanding how the flexibility works in deciding whether to, and I'm not talking virtual academy, I'm talking a student who goes to school either in the traditional everyday, when we're in the green zone, or if we are in the yellow zone with the hybrid. Is that any time can that child choose to go to a virtual learning? I know that if they've been exposed or if they test positive, they will automatically do that. But if a parent decides that they're worried that the child is not safe, or there's immunosuppression in the home, or for some other reason, can they decide, okay, we're going to start just using the hybrid virtual learning, not virtual academy, but just stay home and use the Sumner Connect? Can they make that choice back and forth?
Scott, we've talked about that, and I'll let Scott answer that.
Yeah, I think Ms. Hawkins, that what we've tried to do all along is build a system that gives us the maximum amount of flexibility to take care of our students' needs. And so I can see, I think, listening to your question, I think there are two scenarios I can see that fit that. Is one, and we've kind of worked on an attendance plan. We're going to troubleshoot it again tomorrow and then roll it out to principals. But what we've tried to do is think about, for instance, I feel like there will be some parents that a child's going to get sick, and it's probably something like strep or a cold or something like that. But initially, I think every parent and everyone is going to feel really concerned every time there's a cough that they may have COVID. And so we want to build out a system. So if I'm home 3 days, we will use the tools that we built into Sumner Connect with Google Classroom for those children to be able to learn at home. So I think we will, the first rounds, I would say yes, we can meet those needs in the traditional classroom. And it's why we're going to work with our teachers to provide materials, provide supplies, especially for kids that don't have access to the internet. It will change, if they don't have the internet, it'll change the way that we deliver those contacts from the teacher. It'll have to be more like phone or using Remind to message, or virtually if they have access to a computer, and we can leverage Google Classroom in that way. I think that you're right. I think that, I'm trying to envision a family of, say, 5, and one parent gets COVID, and it just slowly, like we see with flu, it just slowly works its way through the family. And each time someone new tests positive, it's 14 days of quarantine. We wouldn't want to force the virtual academy on anyone, but I envision us probably having some type of rolling admission where we could talk to parents. Probably we would run this through our principals and see if we needed to slide them over to the virtual academy for the rest of the semester, just so we could maximize the learning opportunities for the child. So, I think once we will build the structure at the system level and get everything rolling, but then those kind of case by case basis. What we've, I think one of the really exciting things we've done with our attendance department, they've started this move a couple years ago, is not for attendance to be like a heavy-handed tool with truancy, but to look at it as a way to aid and assist our families. And so that's going to absolutely be flipped that way this year. Our attendance department will be talking to families and parents constantly when they're hitting attendance issues. And so the goal of those conversations will be is how can we best serve your child? So, do we need to look at using Sumner Connect for the short term, or is this going to be something longer where we need to consider the virtual academy?
So there is some flexibility there for
Yes.
specific needs?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's gonna have to be.
Also, I was wondering what flexibility and options do teachers have? if they feel that they are working in an unsafe environment?
So, what we've tried to do is let teachers know to contact HR. Everyone's gonna be different, because some would qualify for, some will qualify under FFCRA, which has just been implemented, federal policy since the pandemic. Some will not. Some may qualify under FMLA if they have a condition currently that's not COVID related. So it's just dependent on the particular person, whether they would qualify or not. So we've tried to.
Would they be required to go to work?
Yes.
If they felt like they were working in an unsafe environment, they would still have to go to work?
Yes.
Okay. And my last question is there a chance that we will be shifting to a red zone before our start date?
It's
And
always,
what, and
oh,
so,
yeah,
so
there's
people
always,
should
there's always
be
a
aware
chance.
that that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And to have a backup plan.
I think
that we
we've
can say-
always, I think if we're doing this correctly, or what I think is correct, then you're gonna use information. We're, 2 weeks out from the start of school. So I think for our parents, we have to go ahead and say, this is how we intend to start school. And that's what we intend to do. We've looked at cases the last few days. Today was higher. The previous 2 days were both lower. We're gonna look at all that information and continue to evaluate that. So we could go the first 2 weeks in the phase in and then go to red.
I think that's all good. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. The first one is, I think one of our greatest successes in the spring were the meals that we were able to provide to our students. Is there a plan to handle meals? A student is there on Monday and now they're not back till Thursday. Do we have a plan for handling that? I've had a number of phone calls from religious and other civic organizations that said they're willing to step in, and I didn't know what the plan was.
Yeah, so Jennifer, Andy, they've met a bunch of times. Obviously, the school nutrition program is governed by a ton of rules, most of them from the Fed, passed down through the state level. And we dealt with navigating some of those prior to the waiver last spring and then post-waiver. And we're asking those same questions that we did in the spring about serving students and how we can do that and get as much food out to students as possible. They haven't been as receptive probably this for August as they were, at the latter part of the spring. But we continue to ask those questions, and we're not the only district. I think every district's asking the same questions. To answer your question, we are making a plan to have students that can come and receive food at school, even on the days that they are not, scheduled to be on campus.
Thank you. The second question I've got is in regards to the special education. Is there any will there be any consideration given to students 6 through 12 that maybe aren't CDC but maybe need that structure? And the reason I'm asking is, I've got my oldest graduated a couple years ago. He had high functioning autism, and autism is one of those things, like with special education, where it manifests itself differently in every student. And in special education, every situation is unique. One of the things that he really needed was structure. And he did not do well when he didn't have that structure. I've got other children that are in elementary that are getting speech services right now. And that, and we're okay with the hybrid phase-in model the first 2 to 3 weeks, and then they'll get back into that program. But there are other students at 6 through 12 that maybe fall into that category where I'm not CDC, but I still need maybe more support than just the 2 day a week. Are we going to look at any special circumstances or considerations, or if parents, as they go through either the IEP meetings at the beginning of the year or through registration, where we can address that and maybe help them?
So I'm gonna let Norma follow up on this. Obviously, we understand that with students that have autism, the structure is very, very important, and we've talked about that. I think we always have to look at the basis of our goal is to be in school in tradition, in person, and have as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, as quickly as possible. So we realize that's a concern. I think Norma and her group are looking at how we do that. One thing that we talked about, when you look at the number of students in our system that would fall into that category, kind of like what Ms. Hawkins was asking about earlier, we felt like the social distancing aspect, if we brought all of those students back to campus, would be problematic because that would kind of defeat the purpose to some extent of doing that. And then I also think that it also causes at some point some discrepancy between those that you restrict that can't come and that can come. Does that make sense? And so you get kind of caught in that. We're going to have a plan, but we're just hopeful that we can get back in person as quickly, safely as possible. Norma, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, one thing I'd add to that is that with the possibility that at any time a student may be exposed to COVID, you know, it's just a given that might happen, and suddenly that student at any point in the year may be at home, only doing remote through Sumner Connect and Google Classrooms. They may be doing that for 14 days. So during this phase-in time, we want to be exposing all the students. You know, what is it like to get on Google Classrooms? Find your assignments and do that while we can support them at the school and show them how to do that and then practice it. So we'll be meeting with each family and talking about what are the needs, and if that structure needs to be that a certain time or a routine that the person that's going to check in with you, because the teachers will be checking in with all the students even on the days, on the other 2 days when they're not there. So we'll be working with the students, and we need to take into consideration the unique needs. If it's highly structured and it's got to be a certain time, we're going to work with that. But I do think exposing the students who can get access to Google Classrooms and get information that way, we need to be teaching them how to do that, because at any time it could happen.
Thank you. Then I've just got a couple other things I wanted to mention. First, I wanted to say that one of the things I've always appreciated about your leadership, Dr. Phillips, is your willingness to listen. You know, I found that in my years on the board that, you know, when we've had to address big topics or big challenges, I've always seen a lot of groupthink around that. It's not you sitting in your office trying to figure out, throwing darts at a board to figure out what the solution is, whether it be putting the insurance program together, whether it be this program, many of the other programs that we've been able to implement in our school system. I appreciate that you take that feedback and you're not so tied to something that you're not afraid to admit that, hey, there's not anything better that we can do. And so I really appreciate the adjustments that you've made. You know, the other thing I just wanted to mention is that, as we went through the stats and the numbers and all the data, I've got 4 children in the school system. I've got one that's going to be at the high school here in Gallatin. I've got 3 others that are going to be at Union. And so, I do want to say that I really appreciated the registration process at Union this year. The online through Skyward was great. I got all 4 done in about 15 minutes. I got all 3 through their classrooms today in about 25 minutes. And so it was really streamlined and organized, and I really appreciated that. But I wanted to say that, I believe that what we've put together, this reentry plan, is a solid plan. It's not perfect. There are plenty of places where, parents can look at it and say, I wish they had done this or I wish they had done that. But this virus is just, there's so much unknown about it that it makes it hard to have a perfect plan. I like that there is some flexibility. I like that there's an opportunity for those that don't want their children in the classroom to have a virtual learning experience, even though that isn't optimal. At least they have that option. I appreciate the way you've made adjustments to the hybrid schedule to try to get, our K through 5 students in the schools. I appreciate that. My wife and I, we're going to be sending our kids to school on the traditional model, but it was not an easy decision. My wife is a nurse, and she has worked on the COVID floor numerous times. And so she's seen firsthand what this disease can do. And I know they say, kids aren't susceptible, but that sounds great until it's your kid that gets it, and you're seeing cases where that's happening. And so I think, I appreciate the safety and the concerns and the cleaning that we're trying to put around this to keep our kids as safe as possible, as well as staff. I have an aunt in the school system who's in remission from cancer, and she has concerns, how this might impact her. And so, I go back to it's a solid plan. It's not perfect. If I were filling out the survey, I'm not sure I'd say I was 100% comfortable with anything, because I do have worries. I do have concerns as a parent. Do I want my children to get this? No. Is there a chance they could encounter someone in the school system? Absolutely, 100%. And I don't think there's anything we can do to stop that from happening. But I think we're doing the best that we can to give them an environment to learn and to try to take care of them as best as we can too. But yeah, we looked at virtual as an option. And I do have worries, and I worry not just for the kids, but I worry for the teachers and the staff as well. And I pray for their safety, and I know it's going to hit us at different spots, and I just pray that it's not bad. I just, to the parents that are out there, to all the parents that are worried and concerned and looking at us, it's, even as a board member, this isn't something easy to deal with. It's not like the flu where we know if you've got it, you've got it. But even with the flu, we still have parents, drugging up their kids with Tylenol and sending them to school anyway. With this, there's so many unknown factors about transmission, about how you can catch it, about what it can do, whether you're symptomatic or asymptomatic. But I just think, that we need to respect the decision that every parent makes for their child, because every situation is different, every circumstance is different. And, in a country like this, it's supposed to be a democracy where we have the ability to make our own decisions and not be judged for that. And I just hope that as we move forward with this plan, that everyone understands that we're doing the best that we can. It's not perfect, but we're trying our best to give our kids the opportunity to learn, our students and our staff, the ability to be in a safe environment, and our prayers are with everyone. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Ms. Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of really positive comments, and I commend Dr. Phillips and our staff and principals for all the hard work that has gone into this. I think of the scattered across our county, the children of families who are either live in an area where there's no internet service or they do not have the resources to provide their children with the equipment for distance learning. I know that we've talked about that in the past. Can you update us on what our plan would be in that case?
Sure, and we're obviously, if we continue with the hybrid past that first phase-in model, that's one of the things that having K-5 all there, that was one of the considerations about that, is that it would give us the opportunity to possibly in middle school and high school deploy some devices for those students that did not have a device. The hybrid model that we would be on in the extended or even in the phase-in gives us a chance to give those students some materials, hand them materials to complete work, so they wouldn't be necessarily just dependent on the technology side of a complete red box, everybody's out model. And so we did have some consideration about that. Obviously, we're like every other school district back in May. May, and then again, recently, we've ordered additional technology that we're hopeful it comes in pretty soon, but there's a backlog of that stuff, so we don't really have a certain date yet. But long story short, we do think that having the K-5 all in and then the staggered schedule on 6/12 and the extended hybrid gives us a chance to have more technology out to students if we need it.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Thank you, Mr. Wise and Ms. Andrews.
So one more question. Since with this new information presented tonight, there may be some parents who decide now that they liked one option, were committed to one option, and now with new information have decided they want to change. What is the process for those parents who want to make a different decision even though they've already registered?
So if they registered for Sumner Virtual, then they can, Scott, I guess, contact their principal and retract that if they wanted to. I mentioned this in the slide, we're gonna go ahead and extend the registration for Sumner Virtual until Sunday evening.
Is there time?
I don't know, maybe midnight Sunday or something, I don't know. But,
Ms. Andrews, I think probably the way we will address that is when they registered, we pulled parent emails. We will probably just email. We were going to do this anyway because we had some people that registered for virtual very early on, like the first day it was open, and we've heard some anecdotal feedback that some people thought they were choosing the hybrid and virtual. So we're going to probably on Thursday morning, we're going to send an email to all those parents, and then we'll get clarifications on it that way.
If they chose hybrid and they want virtual, can they just go back into Skyward and pick that up?
No, they just tell us and we'd move them over.
Just email the principal and let
No, we'll email the parents directly.
I'm saying if they originally chose hybrid and now want to do virtual.
Oh, yeah.
Then they can go in Skyward.
No, they can't go in Skyward. We'll have to.
Once your registration is complete, any changes that you make, you need to contact your principal.
Right.
Okay. And then the evening, so we need to say like 6-ish, something like that, maybe on Sunday.
we can leave it open until 10.
Okay.
Midnight.
Okay. I'm just right.
It's just whatever we say.
I have a procrastinator heart, so I understand that. And so
Wherever we set it, we can say 10 o'clock on Sunday evening's fine. It's just, wherever we put in Skyward that we're gonna stop registration, then it will let you do it after that.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. I'll come back to you, Ms. Blackman.
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Phillips, and your staff for all the changes and for thinking of the parents, the students, the teachers, everyone that was involved that they all had input in that, and thank you for that. And thank you, all my fellow board members, for all the comments that you made tonight. They were all wonderful, and I think we're headed in the right direction. And thank you again. I also wanted to know, will this be out on, the parents will have it? No, okay.
We'll update the actual plan this evening and make sure that link that we've already have out for parents to see, it will have those changes in it that we made.
Thank you, Ms. Blackman. Mr. Duncan.
Just a quick comment. I don't know where it fits in, but since we've been talking about Skyward, I want to just drop this little tidbit here. Not all schools on their website have a direct link to Skyward. Some places you have to go through a link to a link to a link, and my house is getting inundated with requests on how to access it. So I would recommend that every school website have a direct link to Skyward to help expedite the process.
Good. Scott, we
Thank
make
you.
sure we do that. We'll work on that tonight. Thank you, good feedback.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Ms. Andrews.
Sorry, I have another question. I sometimes have questions coming in, and I apologize, but might as well ask them. Was asked if there's a way for specifically high school students to go ahead and view what their schedule is going to be this upcoming year before they make a decision. I guess so that they can look and see how that's gonna relate on Sumner Virtual Academy, if they will, so is there a way for them to
I think
see their
that-
schedule prior to making the decision?
I think that's all part of us trying to make sure they register online so we can figure that out within the school.
Yeah, I think the challenging part of that, Ms. Andrews, would be is that we're gonna have so much motion over the next 2 weeks that if we turn it on, we can't just turn it on where the ones considering Virtual Academy can see. And then what happens is that, I mean, because still at this point with the number of changes that are gonna happen to schedules over the next 2 weeks, it's gonna be, I mean, what would be easier is if they choose Virtual Academy, we'll pretty much be able to match their schedule initially. It'll be way easier on the backside if they choose virtual. We will be, I mean, the only classes that we won't be able to match are, we have a couple of high schools that have year-long courses where they blended, like at Hendersonville High School, where they blended AP World History and Advanced Honors English. We don't really have a way that we can do that on Edgenuity. There's a series, there are just a couple of those that we can't match. But realistically, we're able to pretty much match everything else. So it would be way easier if a child has, because there will be some CTE classes, things like that, that we won't be able to match and we'll have to make some changes anyway. So there will be a change process, but it'll be easier to manage that when we know specifically which kids are going to start the year traditionally and which are going to start the year on Sumner Virtual Academy. Because I understand parent concern about getting the schedules matched, but Edgenuity really lets us match probably 95, 97, 98% of our classes. So it'll be easier for us to fix on the backside.
Ms. Langford and Ms. Andrew, Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, I had one more question for you, Mr. Langford. On the Virtual Academy, honors classes are accessible through Virtual Academy. Are AP still spring semester?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Daniels, Dr. Phillips? You're done? Everybody done? All in, all done, as we say in Austin business? All right, let's move along then. Next item on the agenda is new business, discussion and interaction regarding emergency suspension of board policies during 2021 school year resolution. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Ms. Bachman. Second by Mr. Wilkerson. Any discussion? Ms. Hawkins.
Yes, I would just like to make clarification on what we are voting to allow. I know that there's been some worries that we're silencing our voice as a board by adopting this resolution. And I would just like to clarify for those who think that already right now, this board does not vote to approve or disapprove of an opening plan for the schools. So voting to approve this resolution does not change that situation. It is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this just allows you as superintendent to have more flexibility to deal with the nuances of this particular situation where you're having to shift and pivot on a dime, given a situation that involves school days or things that may cross the line into policy, where the board does not have to get together again to make that decision, that it gives you that flexibility, and that you are not, by our approving this resolution, we are in no way silencing anything as far as approval or disapproval of the plan to reopen.
That's correct, yeah. So this is very similar to the resolution that was passed earlier, back in March, April, you know, when we had to shut down schools. And so Ms. Hawkins is correct in the sense that approving this is basically saying that the document that we gave you, that includes all of that information, that you approve that, because we're going to submit that to the state. But it does not take away any authority from the board that you have or you will continue to have, nor does it give me really any more authority than I already have under statute. So it's basically, as Ms. Hawkins said it better than I can, it basically just gives me the ability to manage the plan within inside the system. So, you know, I can do my job, and we don't necessarily have to meet every other day to talk about the latest piece of information about that. That's really what it does.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips and Ms. Hawkins. And
And I believe it says in there too that you'll keep us informed on what you're doing, so.
And if something changes where we have a major shift with the plan, or we have to change something major within the plan, if there's something that happens where I need to make a major modification to policy, something of that nature, we don't expect that to happen, but if that were to happen in the future, we would bring that back to the board to say that.
All right, anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion and interaction regarding the resolution for our students and teachers requesting a waiver from state testing and accountability. Is there a motion?
Second.
Mr. Wise, I believe he got his light on first, so, and second by Mr. Daniels, so.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
May I make a comment since I made the motion to approve
All right.
this motion? Not only do I want us to have an approval by majority vote, I would like for us to send a resounding message to the state with a unanimous vote.
We'll see how that comes about. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding a revision to policy IHA grading system. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion?
Hey, can we make the maker of the motion in the second to waive second reading? And I'm pretty sure this is around, Scott, is this, go ahead, tell me.
So, a couple things. One, we've collected a lot of feedback over about the last 16, 17 months on our elementary grading. You know, we've been to you a couple times and fielded requests and calls about standards-based report cards, and we've tried it each year. We've tried something new to make it better. And so talking to our principals and teachers over the last year, we have shifted back. Basically, I'll just give you a quick overview, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions about it. But 4th and 5th grade will look like traditional old school grading where kids will get a numeric grade. You know, it's interesting, we'll have our first group of kids going into 6th grade this year, and we're going to have to transition them from standards-based report cards back to traditional report cards. So we wanted 4th and 5th graders to have traditional grades. And then in K through 3, we will use, I won't go so, JJ will make fun of me if I get too instructionally here, but we will basically use, standards, you have individual standards, then you have domains. Teachers will assess, they'll look cumulatively at the work over the grading period, and they will assign kids grades or scores on the standards-based platform, but based on the totality of their work over that grading period. So we feel like, one, it will reflect more of what the child is doing, but it will also, during this time where we may be bouncing back and forth between different models of instruction, it gives our teachers the maximum amount of flexibility to record where kids are and to give them multiple opportunities to demonstrate the mastery of the standard, which is really what we're after. So we felt like going with that model in K through 3, but then introducing our students to a traditional grading scale in 4th and 5th grade would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Langford. Motion was made by Mr. Daniels to approve, second by Mr. Wise. Will y'all both agree to waive second reading?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion on waiving second reading? Seeing none, we're voting on the motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Andrews. I didn't see you.
Since we just approved the resolution asking the state to waive testing, and part of our grading scale does include those tests, how would that then adjust for those final grades?
If the legislature makes that change, I think one year we brought that back to the board, and we had a footnote at the bottom of the policy that said, for this year, those grade the calculation would not be performed to blend in the TCAP end of course, Tennessee Ready. So we would have to do that again.
Right, but we would, hypothetically speaking, since we are sending this to them, if they were to approve it, then their grades though are going to be 50-50. It's not going to be a percentage.
It would not be a percentage of the test scores blended into their.
The first semester, second semester.
That's right. Exactly. The way it used to be before we started putting Tennessee Ready scores into the grade. And I don't want to belabor this, but I asked this of every elementary principal when I did my evaluation last fall, and every one of them said, without hesitation, said 4 or 5, got to go back to a grade. K-1-2, standards-based way to go. 3rd grade, it's 50-50. But Scott, I came back, I debriefed with Scott after I made my rounds last fall with all the principals, and he brought a team in, he brought a team of principals in, and they've worked on this, and so this is a product of that work.
All right, we're voting on the motion to approve and waive second reading. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding the reduction of retainage of Gene Brown Elementary project. Is there a motion? You don't talk loud enough. Motion made by Mr. Wise, second by Ms. Andrews. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Unfinished business. Next item, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the general purpose budget.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the federal budget. Motion approved by Mr. Gregory, second by Mr. Wise. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion of study session items. I believe that would be you, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, this may be when we actually get to return to our continuing journey through the policy manual.
Indeed.
We should have some policies for everybody to look at next meeting.
All right, sounds good. Again, as usual, if any of them, if you got questions on any of them, you can always contact Mr. Johnson or Dr. Phillips' office, and they'll get it on the agenda for us. Next item on the agenda is communications from board members. Ms. Hayes, let's start with you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Brewer. I do want to clarify, I got a text from a parent after my comment about struck by lightning. One text, it could have been a whole lot more, so I feel better about that. That this didn't come across real callous by any means. I'm concerned about the spread. This was just based on statistics and data. You know, you can get reports from everywhere, but looking at the pediatrician at Cincinnati, who this is actually on, Dr. Scott Hootnick's The Compass Pediatrics, his Facebook page, yes, that a child 12 and under is more likely to die from getting struck by lightning than die from COVID. So I did not want that to sound, there's so many other things, and flu, and greater chance of dying of flu than of COVID. And then these are other pediatricians who begin to write their data, that have been keeping data, and look at this information about children and 12 and under, our older kids. And when I made the comment about socializing in middle school and high school, teaching our students and modeling the good behavior and also rewarding the good behavior, and having students have buy-in in the Mass with Beach, HHS. So seeing it as a positive way of delivering and getting students to move in this fashion than coming down with a hammer. To put all this in perspective, a week ago, yesterday, and I was gonna mention this at our moment of silence, we had an HHS student die. And I know this young man, he's a great, fantastic young man, and we all have them in our districts. Trey Webster, on Monday the 13th, had an aneurysm. He's an AP, excellent, fantastic young man. I remember him at HHS graduation, coming across this stage with the most winsome smile. He's going to Virginia Tech. He was then transferred from Skyline to Vanderbilt, and I think they did all they could. And of course, the family made some difficult decisions on Wednesday and allowed the body just to respond in the way after they took him off the breathing machines and all those things. But this young man, we just mourn his loss in our community. And so when I start letting a lot of things just stress me out or get to me, and you're not sleeping well, we've all been answering emails and on the phone till late in the evening. And we're all very concerned about the decisions we make for the safety and the well-being of our teachers, administrators, staff, our nutrition team, everyone, our SRO officers in the schools. We are family, and we look out for one another. But just remember the Webster family. This is it's such a great loss in their life. So thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Ms. Bachman?
Thank you, Tammy, for mentioning that. I did not know the young man, but I mourn for his family. That was such a tragic thing. Need to put our things in perspective, put our lives in perspective, and what we do in perspective. And just like Mr. Wise said last month, it's all for the children, and that's why we're here, and we're doing the best we can for them. And again, thank you, Dr. Phillips, for you and your staff for pulling this all together and for listening to all, from the parents, the teachers, the principals, listening to our comments. But thank you so much. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman. Ms. Andrews?
Yes, I just want to say thank you again to everybody who's poured into this plan. It was definitely a Goliath to tackle, and it continues to be, and it continues to grow. And that's the hard thing, that, and the reality is, this is what we have set in place because of the information that we have today. And I appreciate, Dr. Phillips, your flexibility and understanding that it's going to change. I mean, there's not a if, it's a when. And so to have everybody on the same page, and our goal is to do what's best for students. I know Scott and I have texted lots of times throughout the week saying, hey, you know, what about this? What about this? What about this? Just to give clarity, because I feel like to some degree there is some confusion out there for parents, and so just trying to make sure everybody is on the same page, everybody has the same information. I will say a special thank you to Ms. Dam, because I know that you have been tasked with a huge load. It's one thing for us to make a broad plan for our typical students who in some ways can fit into a box. It's another to make plans for students who not only don't fit into the box, but there's probably about 4,000 other boxes they also don't fit in. And so they all have all of our special ed students have their special needs and special circumstances and needs that need to be met. And so that's a monstrous task that you do well. And I appreciate the work that you put in, you and your team, to make sure that those students, I love how Wilson County refers to them as their exceptional students. And so, but you put the time and effort to make sure that our exceptional students have what they need to succeed. So we don't always give a shout out to you. I'm not going to say anything about that person over there tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to give my thoughts, prayers, and condolences to the HHS family. That's never an easy thing. And I hope and pray that it doesn't happen to anybody, any other school family. It's just a horrible, horrible thing. You know, we want to extend that to the families and at the school and everybody. I want to take an opportunity to use Dr. Phillips, his advice to use a great thing that's happening at Beach High School. The turf is almost done. You've seen it on social media. It looks wonderful. It looks so inviting. So I'd like to ask all the athletes and the band and the coaches and all the students that want to go and have those games to wear masks to school. That's my challenge tonight. And that's all I've really got to share, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the advice. Dr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Ms. Hawkins?
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Phillips for listening and for responding. I know you've gotten a lot of information headed your way from all kinds of people, and you've shown tonight that you have been listening. Number two, I want to say that the loss of a student of Mr. Webster is one too many. And the discussions and the decisions that are made in this room, my mind can only think that we cannot have another child or teacher or staff member. We cannot lose these people. We cannot lose another one. One is too many. And my condolences to the family. That must be terribly painful, and I'm so sorry. Third, I would like to encourage everyone to remember that, or to be aware that right now the numbers are going up. I've spoken with the CEO at Sumner Regional Medical Center, and she said the hospitalizations are going up, and that Vanderbilt is not even taking COVID patients right now. They're full. So I would like to encourage people, if you want your child to come back to school full time, which is what we all want, we want normal, please do your part to help bring these numbers down and to contain the spread. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Daniels?
I just wanted to reiterate again, I appreciate the thousands of hours that have been poured into this plan by Dr. Phillips and staff to try to give some guidance to our district and our students and our staff to allow them to get back into schools in as safe environment as possible. You know, I know as a board member, we've, over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we've been inundated with phone calls, we've been inundated with emails, and I appreciate all the feedback that I've gotten from everyone, whether I agreed or disagreed with their opinion. You know, I've seen studies, I've seen stats, I've had so much information shared with me that contradicts other information, and everybody's got their own source, and everybody's got their own doctor and their own friends that tell them stuff that they take as fact. You know, but at the end of the day, you know, regardless of what the numbers say, regardless of what the statistics say about how susceptible someone is or isn't, as I said earlier, it's great until it's your child. It's great until it's one of your family members that comes down with this. And yes, you can say that, you know, children may not be as affected as others, which is great until it's your child or your family member that's in the hospital or the ICU or worse, passes away. I know there are parents out there that are struggling with the decision that they want to make for their child, whether to put them into the traditional school system and or go the virtual route. And what I would say to them is I share your struggle. You know, I mentioned I've got an aunt that's a cancer survivor. I've got a son that's got asthma. So we're asking all these questions and we're struggling with it just like you are. And we made a decision that we think is best. And what I would simply say is, whatever decision you make, you're right. Because to me, the most important people in my life are my kids. And I'll do whatever I can to protect them. And yes, I've got questions. And yes, I've got concerns. And yes, I've got worries. But we made a decision that we think is best for them. And if you make a different decision, that's okay. You have that right. And I'm glad that we have a plan that allows parents the opportunity to make that decision. And I again just ask that whether you want every student in the school 5 days a week from the first day of school to the last day of school, or you want everyone out of school virtually for every day until this, you know, until a vaccine is found, or you support a hybrid model that you understand that it's okay that other people have different circumstances, and until we walk in everyone else's shoes, we don't know why they're making the decision that they are. So I just ask that as a community that we support the decisions that everyone makes, regardless of whether it's what we believe is right. For them in their circumstances, they're right. and that's all that matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Mr. Wise?
Well, that brought an old '60s song to mind. Before you criticize and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes. It's a pretty good one. I want to mention some things, and I think if there's one other thing good that has come out of this COVID virus, it is transportation, instruction, special education, human resources, finance, maintenance, transportation, did I mention that one? School nurses, attendance, communication, technology, director, board. Those are, and I've probably left out a few, custodial. Those are different parts of the school system. And I think if the general public realizes how many different parts, safe schools, Katie, thanks for looking up. I think you were asleep while I did. There are legal, SROs. There are so many different parts to a school system. And if you look at this, what we've talked about tonight, every one of those parts was involved in the decisions that compiled this plan. I commend all of those involved, all of those. Let me tell the general public a couple of other things. This board, Dale Phillips, Scott Langford, are not your enemies. They will do nothing intentionally to harm your children. Nothing. They love your children. And that's what they will do as they educate your children. Dr. Phillips doesn't have horns growing out his head. I don't either, I don't think. Mr. Duncan might. These people care for your children. Please support them. Pray in your way for them. We covet your prayers. We also covet your support. And one other thing, and then I'm going to turn my mic off. Your children will echo your attitude concerning school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Brown?
I think none of us would be here if we didn't care about the kids. That's our number one priority. And sometimes we have to make decisions we don't like in order to achieve the goal we're after. So we're after educating them and giving them not only an education, a good education, an excellent one. I need to clarify something I said last week, that I was called a bully and dumb, and I figure maybe there's a little senility, I don't know. I just used an inappropriate word. We were discussing kids that came to school while we're under the mandate of masks, and we're telling parents the kids will have on masks. I didn't want them sent home for not having masks. I wanted to be placed in a different area. So I probably should have used the word separated. I mean, then never does anything happen in the school, you have one person. So there's gonna be several, and you've gotta have a teacher there to teach them. So I wasn't acting like I was gonna put them in a closet somewhere. I don't know of any closet that's empty in a school anyway. But I just want everybody to understand that I just wanted to make sure they got to stay at school, do their lessons, and have a teacher that could teach them. I didn't go into all that because frankly, I forget this is on camera And I know that y'all know me and know my history of what all I've done. So I apologize for being stupid, is what I think it was.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Gregory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the one thing that we, as a school board, need to do, and Mr. Wise went through several different departments and did a great job of telling, sometimes we go by and not mention some of them and think it's routine, but I don't know of one department in this system that has not gone beyond the call of duty during this situation. I think this school board has remained pretty positive through this, and we have to. When we go negative, nothing happens. I promise you, it will go backwards. Now, are we all glad with the situation? I don't think so. I don't think any of us are. But we all, for one thing I think has happened, we all think we have 30,000 children. And it's not just what's in one school or one community, it's 30,000 of them. And we have 4,300 employees. And we want all of them to be safe. Every one of them. Saturday, I spent one of the best days I've had in the last few months for about 2 or 3 hours. And I was visiting with some of Corey Brewer's family. And they had a lot of it was all positive about the school system, which I appreciated that. And of course, he's 3,000 miles from here. But he stays in contact. Talk with his brother, talk with his cousin, talk with his second cousin, who is his guard. And they were very positive about this school system. And again, I want to mention this. This is something important, I think. We're to the point that we can make minor changes to make major differences. I know this staff has worked so many hours. Well, let's put it this way. If their eyelids were open, they were working. I believe that. Appreciate our chairman. He's directed, made a lot of good moves during this. And we have to stay together as a board too. Thank you.
Mr. Gregory, if you turn your light on. Oh, thank you, Mr. Gregory. Now, Mr. Whipson.
Yes, I would like to also give my condolences to the family and everyone that student come in contact with. You know, students have an effect on one another's lives as well as staff and their families, and the loss of a student is a tremendous loss to a community. And I would also like to reiterate what Mr. Duncan said. Please wear your mask. It's the way we're going to defeat this virus, and if everyone would take and wear their mask, it'll be sooner than later. It's a privilege to be part of this board. I thank each one of you for your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. I'll end with a couple of things. One, I'd like to thank the board for the last 2 weeks of asking a lot of relevant questions, good discussion, and being so kind and courteous to one another while they did it. You're a great bunch of folks, and I'm proud to work with you. And then, you know, you hear people say, you know, if I get in trouble legally, I want the best attorneys in the world to represent me. If I have heart trouble or I got cancer, I want the best doctors I can get. Let me tell you, if I get in trouble in the education system, I want this crew working for me. Because these are the elite. They are, and I look at them, and I don't know if they know that I see this in them or not, and maybe they not even thought about it, but to me, I don't see that they look at it as a profession or a vocation or whatever. It's a calling. Every one of those folks out there have been called to do this, and they follow that calling, and so that's why we've got such a great plan going on. They listen to you. I mean, you couldn't ask for any better. And so I don't want to just keep going on, but I really appreciate them. I appreciate all you. And like Mr. Wilkerson said, I'm proud to be a part of this board. And so with that, I feel so adjourned. So we are adjourned.